All right, with that, I would like to welcome you. My name is Chris Weir. I am the Vice President of the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education. Very glad that you all could join us here for this Career Opportunities webinar. This is something that we have been thinking about for quite some time because one of the most frequent questions that we get at the Institute is from school leaders seeking great candidates for open positions at their schools. And so we'll get a little bit into why that is, but that is the case. And we want to, the purpose of this webinar is to inform soon-to-be or recent alums at a lot of the faithful Catholic, soon-to-be graduates rather, or recent alums at a lot of the faithful Catholic colleges and universities that we've come to know in our 15-year history, and express to them, communicate to them the opportunities that await them if they have any interest in teaching at a Catholic school that is dedicated to the Church's tradition in the liberal arts. And we'll get into that in a moment. But a lot of graduates and young alums, we feel, aren't even aware of just how much, how desired they are, how sought after they are, given their quality formation at some of these Catholic colleges and universities, as well as their own personal background in the traditional liberal arts. So that's the purpose of the webinar. And with that, we are going to begin, like we begin all things at the Institute, in prayer. So if you will join me. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Come, Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of thy faithful, and enkindle in them the fire of thy love. Send forth thy Spirit, and they shall be created, and thou shalt renew the face of the earth. Let us pray. O God, who by the light of the Holy Spirit instructed the hearts of thy faithful, grant us in the same Spirit to savor what is right, and ever to rejoice in his consolation, through Christ our Lord. Amen. Mary, Mother of the Church, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. I should also note that we are recording this webinar, and we do intend to post it on our website so that anyone who might be interested and was not able to join us today can do so. So we are recording. Okay, so just to give you a little sense of what we're going to be doing today and who is involved, like I said, my name is Chris Weir, and I'm the Vice President of the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education. Some of my colleagues are with us today. Our Executive Director, Elizabeth Sullivan, will be addressing you next. We have Dr. Andrew Seeley, who is our Director of Advanced Formation, and he's also a tutor at Thomas Aquinas College. We have our Director of School Services, Colleen Richards. And then we also have a special guest, Brianna Santana, who is a second grade teacher at Holy Innocent School in Long Beach and was in the position of our focused audience today a year ago. She's a new graduate from Franciscan University of Steubenville, and she's going to give a little bit of her personal experience a little bit later in the webinar. That's the lineup. I think we also might have our president, Michael Van Hecke, with us for a little bit, and he might chime in as well. But for those of you that aren't familiar, the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education, our mission is to inspire and equip Catholic educators to renew today's Catholic schools. And we do that by drawing on the Church's tradition of education. One thing we always talk about at the Institute is this is not our opinion. This is not the opinion of some guru. We're simply going back to the sources, back to the Church teaching on education as she has always taught, and helping to renew Catholic schools in that tradition, which we'll talk about today. And we do that because our own proven tradition, our own proven Catholic tradition, is the best way to free teachers and students for the joyful pursuit of faith, wisdom, and virtue. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our Executive Director, Elizabeth Sullivan, and let her take it from here. Beth, it's all you.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome, everyone. If you are a faith-filled recent college graduate or alum who really wants to make a difference in this world, we have a promising option for you, and that's what we want to talk about today. So at this moment in time, there's a vibrant renewal of Catholic education that's spreading all across the country and even internationally if you want to travel. The schools we serve are in need of well-formed liberal arts grads who will respond to a really urgent need to put faith and learning back together again, not only in the classroom, but in the culture at large. For the past 50 years, all teacher training has been fundamentally secular. And as you know, the dominant mode of education right now is based in a very pragmatic and utilitarian philosophy of education that basically erases the creator from his creation. So now there are a growing number of educators and parents who are really driving this renewal, and they're grasping the fact that this pervasive error has even seeped into our Catholic schools. And it is undermining the faith and reason of our students. It's also undermining their ability to think clearly and deeply about things so that they can order their lives to what is true and good and beautiful, and their loves as well. So we believe, and we have seen, that the remedy for this crisis is not necessarily curriculum, it's not necessarily governance or more standardized testing or an iPad in the hands of every student. The renewal of Catholic education is, and its impact on the culture really depends on teachers, because teaching is relational. Teachers are the privileged guides who help students to discover the truth of things in the world God made, whether it's in mathematics or science or history or language or art or music, theology, no matter what. But teachers can't give what they don't have. So this is where you come in. Your formation in faith and the integrated habits of mind that come from a really solid liberal arts education are very, very valuable and prized in this renewal. So once you have this deep well, you can be taught to grow in the art of teaching. And in fact, that's what our institute does. We serve the schools in our network by providing conferences and workshops and professional development and intensive teacher training classes that help us all grow in reclaiming the church's tradition in the classical liberal arts and sciences. We like to call it the art of teaching in the light of Christ. So you're going to hear in a moment about the fact that there is so much energy and joy in the schools in this network. They really want to restore the nobility of teaching, to free educators from the bureaucratic factory model that often constrains and frustrates them. So these schools are looking for inspired and committed Catholics who really want to serve the church by forming the young. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Andrew Seeley, who's going to speak a little bit about how we got to this point in time, how this renewal really took shape.
Thank you, Beth. One of the striking things about this renewal in Catholic education is it was started by liberal arts graduates, Catholic liberal arts graduates like yourselves, who had a wonderful full experience of what an education at college where the faith was integrated into all aspects of their learning. And those this would have been in the 70s and 80s in the beginning. And when they had their own families and it was time for them to make educational decisions for their children, they just saw that none of the school options had this fully integrated vision of education. And so they just couldn't send their kids to those schools. And they didn't know what to do. But being Americans, they felt that, they had to give the best to their children, and they had to figure out how to do that. And about that time, they discovered a short essay by Dorothy Sayers, a British author who'd given a talk back in the 40s, where she talked about the collapse of education in Britain at that time and its devastating effects. And she said, well, maybe we should look back to an older model. And she said, let's look back to the medieval approach to education and see what they did. And so she turned their attention to the trivium, the focus on the liberal arts of grammar, logic, and rhetoric as the heart of the medieval education. And she gave in this talk suggestions for how this might transform education today. She didn't expect anybody to take it seriously, and nobody did until these American parents said, I have to have a way to offer my children the best kind of education I can. And so many of them took that essay and brought it to life in homeschooling and in independent schools that they started. And these were Catholic parents and non-Catholic parents, and that their efforts, the efforts of many of them, not all of them, but many of them were so successful that other people started to look to them. How are you doing this with your children? How are you forming them in a joyful, full intellectual experience of the faith, intellectual and cultural experience of the faith? So it started to spread. And about that time, the Institute was started, and I began working with many of the educators. And all I wanted to do was to share this great experience that I had had at Thomas Aquinas College as a student and as a teacher, and to share it with them so that they could more fully realize their vision. And it was a very wonderful experience of providence, because there were so many things that happened from a very little, a couple of fish and loaves, and God did so much with it, including connecting with these wonderful people who work with me now. What eventually happened was that some of the diocesan schools started to realize there were these great things happening outside of the diocesan network, and they saw the need to renew their schools. And so they started to pay attention. And the watershed moment came when St. Jerome Academy in Hyattsville, Maryland, developed to renew its school, developed the St. Jerome Educational Plan, which was put together in a collaborative effort between the teachers and the parents involved. And that, not only did that help them to renew their school, and they became a model of what can be done, but also because of their educational plan, which they made available to others, that helped to give a blueprint for the many parents and increasingly pastors and even superintendents who wanted to have a more full Catholic experience in their schools. So together with that, and with the growth of our work as an institute over the past decade, we've seen over 100 schools that have made this transition, and more we're working with dioceses that are sharing this with their educators. And we've learned a lot from our own experience, from in collaboration also with some other organizations like the Circe Institute. We have found ways to make this a very doable and exciting and solid transformation process. So it is, I guess just the main theme of this is that it started from graduates like you will be, from institutions like yours, not from people who had been trained thoroughly in education models, but those who had lived it themselves, who found the ways to bring that to their own teaching activities. And that's what we think we are able to help schools with that. And so the schools that you'll join now, some of them are in sort of the startup situation, but we're helping to make that a much more deliberate and successful process.
Great, thank you, Andrew. So that's a little background of the movement itself, or the growth of this renewal throughout our Catholic schools. And Colleen Richards, our Director of School Services, is going to talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be in those schools.
Sure. Thank you, Chris. So I am now with the Institute as Director of School Services. But for the previous 8 years, the past 8 years, I was head of school at one of the Institute member schools, St. John Bosco in Rochester, New York. And before that, I spent 17 years as a classroom teacher in various settings of Catholic schools and independent schools, but all with kind of what I would describe as the Bosco. I was doing something new. I came from that teacher credential pool. Those of us who have the education degrees, and we learned a certain way to do things. And I learned something new coming into St. John Bosco and led a faculty in this new thing as well. And the part of that I'd really like to convey to you today is what a beautiful experience that was. to come out of the teaching profession, which, as many of you know, or if you've heard from teachers, is very rewarding in its ways, because you're working with the young, and there's that energy and enthusiasm, and you get to watch them learn. But when you get to the privilege of giving them something better, it's even better. And that's what I really want you to know. I saw the faculty that I worked with at St. John Bosco. I saw the amount of work that they had to do, and let's be honest, the teaching is a lot of work. But after having worked at 8 schools, what I saw at St. John Bosco is this faculty was the happiest group of teachers I had ever worked with. And as I tried to figure that out, a couple things came to mind. First of all, there was a beautiful Catholic faith that they shared. And so they were grounded in that. But secondly, they were given materials and a pedagogy, and basically instructed to immerse yourselves in beauty, truth, and goodness. All this work you're doing, you're immersing yourselves in beauty, truth, and goodness. And instead of feeling overburdened, what they discovered was a great joy. And so what I want to let you folks know that, yes, a teacher credential is important for what it is, but what you have as graduates of liberal arts colleges, with the solid foundation of faith and reason that come together, you have a gift that a lot of us teachers with the credentials were not given. And so at St. John Bosco, where I had my lineup of teachers, and some had the degrees in education and others had degrees in liberal arts, for example, we found out very clearly that those liberal arts grads had a great deal to offer everybody else on staff. And so we really fostered a lot of collaboration where, this teacher can help that one maybe with some classroom management stuff, and here's how you do report cards a little better, things like that. But those students who had the intellectual foundation, we relied on them very heavily. They really helped form the backbone for our school. We had a school that, in the liberal arts schools, our member schools, many of us were teaching history, which some of us never taught history before. It was always social studies. Well, guess what? There's a difference. And it was those liberal arts grads who really knew the difference and could help us kind of fill in the gaps and go, so this will go there, and these things can go together, and really sweep across the culture to fully integrate history, religion, the arts, literature, music, all of those things tie together to give this very deep integrated experience to the students and to the faculty, and then to the parents as well. So it's just a very beautiful experience, and I want you to know that as a graduate of a liberal arts college, that you have a particular gift. You have received a heritage that we very much want to pass on to the young, and we need the people who have it to help us do that. So we really need you. And when this little webinar is over and the recording is posted, I hope you will spread it far and wide. Spread it to anybody you know who has the kind of, not necessarily the skill set, who has the background, who has this formation, who is in the process of receiving this heritage that we have from the church, this heritage of what a true education is. And you will spread it to others, because our schools really need you, and you'll be very happy with us.
On that note, we have a guest who will guarantee just how happy you'll be from her own experience. Miss Brianna Santana is the second grade teacher at Holy Innocents Catholic School in Long Beach, where I am a little bit biased. My daughter, Mary Elizabeth, is a kindergartner. But I only say that because I can say from experience, watching Miss Santana, there's a sense, I've been in education for a long time, and I think there's a real sense of your first year teacher group, whether that was at the high school I worked at or some other elementary schools I've been around. There's a very explicit sense that you've got your first year group, and I just really don't see that at Holy Innocents with Miss Santana and a couple other of the teachers that we've brought in as first year teachers who have this kind of a background, because like Colleen was saying, you really come to the faculty with a wealth of information that unfortunately is all too rare today in many of our Catholic schools. So you really are bringing something valuable, and I think Brianna's story is a testament to that. And a year ago, she was right in your shoes now. So Miss Santana, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, as Chris just said, I graduated from Franciscan University. I majored in humanities and Catholic culture, which is the liberal arts degree at Franciscan. And I really think it prepared me very much to teach, although it's not a teaching degree. I don't have, I'm not certified to teach, right, through the state. But like he said, all of the classes that I had to take really did prepare me just to have a wealth of knowledge that I am able to share with the kids. And I do think, as Colleen was saying, you do, at least with my faculty, it's really nice to be able to interact with the other teachers, and they're so generous with their time and their knowledge to be able to help you, especially as a first-year teacher. Whereas classroom management might have not come as easy to me. They were there to help me and support me with whatever I needed, as well as with report cards. How do I submit them? How do I, all those little details. But nevertheless, I think the education that I received at my alma mater was crucial to the way that I'm able to share that knowledge with my students. But I really think it was the example of my professor that I had at Franciscan that really kind of gave me an example as to how to teach, and just really following in his footsteps and just remembering the things that he would share with us. It's really, really great to see me being able to share that in the classroom as well. But as they were saying, yes, I think having that liberal arts degree, having that foundation, and going to a truly Catholic college does really give you a huge advantage. Just being able to teach catechesis in the classroom. We were preparing for our first Holy Communion, for the kids' first Holy Communion, and just being able to share who the Lord is with these little ones has just been such a delight. For them to be able to encounter our Lord has been such a pleasure to witness.
And Brandon, can you just talk a little bit about sort of the place you were in a year ago? And I know you had a wide variety of career options, right?
Yes, I was actually planning on going to Ave Maria Law. I wanted to study law and be a lawyer. But my family was in California, and I really did like teaching as well. So that was another avenue that I had open. I apologize. I'm so sorry. Let me turn that off.
Probably another school calling to give you a job offer. So.
Right. No, I have meetings with my students this morning due to the quarantine, so I think it's one of the families calling to see where I'm at. But yes, as of a year ago, I had the option of going to Ave Maria Law, but just due to family, being close to family, I decided to stay in California. And then one of my friends works here at Holy Innocents, and so through that contact, I was able to find out more about the school and the mission. And as soon as I read the mission statement, and my friend Lisa was telling me about the school, I immediately knew that was the standard that I had for schools as I was looking for a job as a teacher. So I knew that whatever school I wanted to apply to, I wanted that school to have that same mission and to have those same standards for its students.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Santana. I know you've got student and parent meetings, so
yes,
we'll sign off. Thank you for sharing that with us and for being here today. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
You got it. What I'm going to do now is I am going to take a moment after hearing all that. For those of you that think you might be interested in pursuing these or learning more about what opportunities are out there, I'd like to direct your attention. Can everyone see our website now? Great. there's a plug for our newest podcast. I just want to point out a couple of places on our website. We're at catholicliberaleducation.org. And right here on our main page, the first thing I want to point out is this recommendations for renewal. This will give you a sense of the process that a lot of the schools that we're talking about have gone through or are going through. And this is the process that that our institute sort of specializes in, walking schools and educators through this process. So by reading through these recommendations for renewal, it'll give you a sense of what many Catholic schools around the country are doing today at their schools. And you'll notice that down here on the bottom, not that it's the last thing for them to keep in mind, but we do emphasize very explicitly that when schools are going through this renewal process, that they really think about hiring in a different way and not be as tied to education degrees or teaching credentials, but really look at, as you see here, teachers who are attracted by the idea of Catholic liberal education. And being grounded in that Catholic, an experience of that Catholic liberal education from a personal perspective is worth its weight in gold to a lot of these school leaders. So that's the recommendations for renewal. And then the other more specific thing, if you look at resources, we've got employment opportunities down here. And this will, the schools that we serve are able to post their job openings on our website here. And we're really the only place that we know of, and that most of the schools that we work with know of, where they can know that it's a job listing specifically for schools that are dedicated to this renewal in the church's liberal arts tradition. So it's a highly sought after job board from the perspective of our member schools and those people that are looking for these types of schools. So here is where you're going to find and you can just see now is the perfect time to be looking. This is when a lot of schools know what openings they're going to have for next year. And so this is where you'll find those opportunities. The second thing I want to alert you to is a brand new service that we're offering our member schools in conjunction with this effort, with this webinar today, is that we've created a member school resume portal. So specifically our ICLE member schools will be able to get access to your resume. So we're hoping that it makes your job easier as a potential applicant, an interested candidate, that you can post your resume here, and you'll see that you can tell folks, you can tell the schools all the things you're interested in. So if you click teaching position, there's all the various, whether it's the grade levels you're interested in, or maybe you've got specific experience with certain subject matter or interest, and then you can upload your resume, cover letter, make any comments, and that will be shared with our now over 70 member schools all over the country. So we hope that makes your job seeking a little bit easier. So I think that, team, is there anything else we wanted to show on the website? Well, you can also, the other thing I will show you is under resources, our map of schools, which we showed a slide of, a still shot. But to give you a sense of how widespread this renewal is, all the Christ the Teacher logos are our ICLE member schools, specifically member schools. The yellow dots are schools that we know of that are committed to this tradition, but may not be member schools yet. But that gives you a sense, and you can browse around this page of the website if you're interested in what schools maybe in your area of the country might be dedicated to this. So, team, anything else on that stuff? Okay.
I did want to add that if you haven't experienced one of these schools for yourselves, it can be hard to imagine how wonderful the experience is. Of course, there are ups and downs, but overall, the joy in the Catholic faith that permeates the community is hard to imagine. Bishop Barron from Word on Fire, who visited one of our member schools, after talking with us, saying Mass there, and then talking with the students there in the different grade levels, he was so impressed that he said that they were better formed than his seminarians had been when he was teaching in seminary. And he said that it really confirmed for him what he had suspected, which is we have vastly underestimated what children are capable of. And that's, I think, you're going to see in these schools, and you can be a part of helping children come to their full flourishing of their human and Christ-centered capabilities.
And I will just add one thing.
Please.
As you saw in that earlier slide, the Holy Sees, we continually go back to the church's teachings on education. You saw the 5 benchmarks set out by the Holy Sees teachings on Catholic schools. So we don't seek the classical liberal arts tradition for its own sake. We seek it because the church's tradition is the best way to achieve those benchmarks, to really point these little souls to Christ. And so we want to draw from the church's tradition and see how this very deep understanding of the human person and the nature of reality all comes together in these schools to point these souls back to God.
That's right. And that's a perfect segue to end on one of our favorite quotes here at the Institute by Pope St. John Paul II in his famous Fides et Ratio encyclical, when he said, "Faith and reason are like 2 wings on which the human spirit rises to the contemplation of truth. And God has placed in the human heart a desire to know the truth, in a word, to know himself, so that by knowing and loving God, men and women may also come to the fullness of truth about themselves." And we are convinced that schools that renew themselves in the liberal arts tradition of the church, as she has always taught it, this is the gift that they are giving their students. And by virtue of that, it spills over into the families that they serve as well. And we really think that that's the heart of the vibrancy and the growth of these schools that are renewing themselves that way. So with that, we hope that we've convinced you to run to the job opportunities page and apply for some of those positions. But first, if you have any questions, we'd love to answer them, those of you that were able to join us live. Any questions out there? And I will go ahead and unmute everyone so you can speak up if need be. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Elizabeth.
Yes. My question is, so I'm in a position for hiring for our school, and I found that the most difficult positions to fill are the specifically the mathematics positions, because there are so few schools that teach math in a liberal manner. I mean, the only ones I'm aware of are TAC, Thomas Aquinas, and St. John's, and students who've had Euclidean geometry, at Christendom or Thomas More College, etc. But I think my question is, do you know of any good programs nationally that are graduating students with good mathematics, specifically with the liberal arts in mind?
I defer to my team.
Great question.
Yeah.
I think you may have named them. Math, unfortunately, mathematics is like the last realm to be ready to have a transformation in the light of the quadrivium. So we're hoping to be able to foster that, but it has been slow that way.
Okay.
I will offer, just from what I've seen at Holy Innocents, where my daughter attends, there's a junior high math teacher. She specializes in science and math for the junior high, and she has no traditional background in liberal arts, but just by virtue of being exposed to the training that the Institute has provided and things like that, she's really changed the way she teaches math. Her background may not be, kind of what you're getting at, but I do think, from what I've seen through her, that a student that has that background and sort of understands it naturally, if they did apply it to math, I think there would be a richness that you wouldn't get. Maybe that's a next best. But,
yeah, that's kind of what I've concluded too, is, are you a good math teacher, and are you open to learning? Like, are you already kind of always looking to deepen your knowledge?
I'd also add that you want teachers who love math.
Yeah.
That for whom the opportunity to actually share what they love about mathematics with their students is attractive, as opposed to having to train them simply in being able to do calculations as quickly as and accurately as possible. So if you can find people like that, that's they're going to fit into your program, even though you may want to work to a more full curricular transformation down the road. But that's the kind of teacher you want. And I think there are significant number of teachers who would find that an attractive opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
And also, Elizabeth, a lot of our teacher training really focuses on pedagogy, on really the art of teaching and helping children to discover even things that might otherwise be conveyed in a didactic way. So taking a teacher who loves math and is open and doing some training seems to really make great progress, as Chris was saying.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
This is more of a comment than a question, but I am just I teach at a traditional Catholic high school, and the things that you're talking about are just so inspirational and so wonderful, and it's like water in the desert, that I just wanted to encourage you and thank you so much for all of what you're doing, and I hope it continues and I hope it spreads, and it was just very, very inspiring to hear. So that's all. Not really a question, but I'm just blessed by what you are doing, and I'll continue to pray for you and your organization moving forward.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mike. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
I have one question. My name is Bernadette. I joined a little late. I'm sorry, but I had plans for joining on time, but that didn't happen.
Right.
Well,
It's a time of plans not happening. So
that's right. I was just wondering, is there going to be maybe a follow-up being sent out? Since I think I probably missed a large portion of this.
Yes.
it is being recorded, and we are going to provide the recording on our website and distribute it. You know, the acknowledgement of that recording and where people can find it as far and wide as we can to a lot of our contacts at the various colleges, universities, and the career services offices. We encourage you to do the same and come on back to the website once we have it up. But by virtue of the fact that you registered, you'll get that link, and we'll keep you in the loop.
Okay.
What school are you at, Bernadette?
I just graduated from Holy Apostles with my bachelor's in English and history.
Great.
Wonderful.
All right.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm happy to have finished, but now I'm trying to stay optimistic and looking for something.
Well, if you came in,
There are a few places right in your area, actually.
Yeah, and if you came in after we pointed it out, the employment opportunities page on our website should give you some decent optimism.
Okay. Thank you. I'll look it up.
You got it. Any other questions?
I would just say something that maybe it's obvious, but maybe not. But post your resume, yes, but also go through and contact those schools. Do both, right?
Right.
Do both.
Yeah.
Very good point. Yep.
Yeah.
Olivia, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. So as an undergraduate who's considering going for a master's program, what would you sort of recommend as ways to help prepare for going into Catholic liberal arts teaching? Especially, I'm at Hillsdale, which I love so much, but it's not a specifically Catholic school. How might I best prepare?
Good question. Beth, you want to take that one?
Well, assuming that you're well formed in your faith, I don't think it takes very much for a deeply faithful person to, be able to make that pivot to help a child see things through the eyes of faith. For example, like a lot of our pedagogical training really focuses on how do we show the integration of reality, and without forcing it down their throat, but sort of showing the Fibonacci sequence in nature, just kind of laying out the mystery that's missed in a pragmatic utilitarian education to allow children to discover that themselves, and also through imagination and story. So I think what you already have would blossom through, a master's degree, yes, but even just coming to some of our, like the national conference, meeting other teachers, There's so many resources and talks and articles on our website. I would recommend having a look at that.
I would also say if you're looking ahead and you'll be choosing courses for your master's degree, and perhaps you'll have room for electives there, and I don't really know what the offerings are at Hillsdale particularly, but having some exposure to a special ed course, I think is helpful for all educators, because most of the things that are taught in special ed, preparing teachers to help students with special education needs, they're helpful really for all students. And I think you would find such a course eye-opening and as well as very practical, because we know we need both. We need the philosophical and the practical, and they go hand in hand.
But Olivia, if what you're asking is, what are the Catholic programs that might be out there that prepare you for this? I think that the most well-developed that we know of is the University of Dallas. They have a master's in classical education. And they're obviously a Catholic university. So if that's what you're asking, definitely look there. And my colleagues can mention any others, but I think that's the most well-developed Catholic. But I think the other point of all of this really is so much of modern education is there's sort of like this expected, you got to get your master's, and I think part of our point is that that may not be necessary. And there are lots of schools all over the country that for whatever reason don't have the same requirements that a lot of schools do. So you might find a head of school somewhere at a school that you love that says, I'm fine with your Hillsdale BA, and I think you're a great teacher, and that's it, and you don't have to do anymore. There are some schools, however, where they might be dedicated to this renewal, but for whatever reason, they have some external forces that they need to still deal with. Like I know at Holy Innocents, for example, the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, they want you to have a teaching credential, but they will waive that, or a master's in education or a teaching credential, but they'll waive that if you go and get a master's degree in something that they deem appropriate. So I know a number of our teachers have gone, are going through the other thing that's nice about University of Dallas is it can be done online. So some of our teachers, where there is that external requirement, but they can use this master's degree instead of this one, even if their head of school doesn't even think they need a master's, but whatever. That can be an attractive option as well, so that you don't feel like you're just doing it to check a box, but you actually maybe get some value out of the experience too. I don't know if my colleagues would add to any of those.
Just that the independent schools are less constrained in terms of requiring the teacher credential. There's some dioceses who will waive it altogether, but there are not that many of them.
Yeah. And we haven't mentioned our Spirit and Craft of Teaching program, which we think packs a ton into a four-day program. Also, there is some a great good to be had in sort of teaching for a few years first before you enter a master's program, so that you'll have a better sense of what it is you really need from that, and also that you like teaching, because sometimes you might actually come into the school and find that you don't like teaching, or it's not quite your thing. And also, another reason to wait, though there are no promises, is we have been working with several universities to establish either alternate teaching credentials that we think are really going to be solid, or even master's programs that we think will be more permeated by a Catholic vision. Never know quite what's going to come of that, but as this movement is growing, I think there'll be more programs available.
I would agree with that. If you have the option where you think you could start teaching for a while and then go back and do your master's, I would highly recommend that. I know the financial realities kind of might get in the way there, but I agree totally with what Dr. Seeley said. It'll give you a much clearer vision of what you need to gain or would hope to gain from. And the other thing that came to mind too is that to encourage you, because the people that we're talking to today, you've come to value the ongoing formation, the ongoing discussion, the ongoing study. And so on the one hand, it feels good to go, yeah, check the box. I don't need that credential. That does feel good. But on the other hand, these communities are really communities of learners. And the heads of school at the schools that we're talking with, that we work with, there's usually some sort of a book study or some sort of faculty meeting where they dive in and have a discussion of this nature. So I just don't want that to be misconstrued like, oh, I'm done, I don't have to do that study anymore. That's really not the case. It's just focused really on what our mission is and what are the things that we really see we need to learn, we want to learn.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I have two book recommendations, Olivia. If you look on our website where there are resources, especially if you want to gain a Catholic understanding of this approach, the two books by Stratford Caldecott, Beauty for Truth's Sake and Beauty in the Word, two of my favorite books on education, really permeated by a Catholic imagination, Catholic sacramental imagination and sensibility. It's more than just the classical liberal arts tradition. It's really marrying that mystery with those tools of learning, which is different.
Thank you
Any
so
other
much.
questions?
Just one last thing with regard to that is the Augustine Institute also offers online master's courses that are pastoral in nature, but I think they do have an attention to teaching for those that are interested.
That's actually been one of the schools I've been considering. Really love what they have been doing with their resources lately. So thank you. This is all so helpful.
Great. Be sure to sign up for our email blasts. And if you're on Facebook, the Facebook page, we're always putting out announcements about our new programs. And our spirit and craft of teaching in the Catholic liberal arts tradition is a very hands-on pedagogical walk through our curriculum and how to teach. So that's very useful. It's useful both for new liberal arts grads who have not taught before, but also veteran teachers who are looking to look at this in a slightly new way.
This is my first time hearing about your organization. So I'm really thrilled to keep learning about all of this, and especially since I want to become a religious teacher, I'm very excited to step into this. So thank you for providing us with all this information.
Absolutely.
You're most welcome. We're praying for all of you. Really, it's teachers. Teachers are on the front lines in reclaiming those little hearts and souls for a culture of truth. It's such,
Yes.
So we're honored to serve all these educators.
That's right. And like we said at the very beginning, we're really doing this because one of the things that we're asked most often is, where can we find great candidates for these positions, because these school leaders do understand exactly what Elizabeth was just explaining, is that the teachers are at the heart of this. And so when a school leader is able to find a really well-formed, enthusiastic, young potential teacher that's, or not young, that's excited about, and even better rooted in through their own personal experience in the traditional liberal arts. Like I said, it's they are hungry for you as applicants, and you can have an immediate positive impact on those campuses. It's not the kind of thing where this is a career you get into and maybe 3 to 5 years from now you can start having an impact because you got the hang of it. These schools will benefit immediately from the kind of formation that you've already been blessed with. So maybe on that note, we wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. Thanks to those of you who might watch this after the fact. Please visit our website. Please, like Elizabeth said, sign up for our mailing list. We will be updating you with different opportunities as they arise. And if we can be of any help, you can always reach us via email at office@catholicliberaleducation.org. So thank you again, and we'll be praying for you. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you.